I got fired on a Tuesday. But Thursday was when I destroyed my boss in front of the entire executive board with 3 little words: Git commit history. I still remember the look on Mark's face as the projector displayed the timestamps showing my work on the revolutionary app framework that he'd claimed as his own. The one he'd fired me for performance issues 2 days before. The one that would have earned him a promotion and a 6-figure bonus. But I'm getting ahead of myself. 6 months earlier, I was just another developer at TechSphere Solutions, a massive software company where innovation was supposedly valued above all else. I sat in my gray cubicle on the 14th floor, surrounded by the ambient hum of fluorescent lights and the rhythmic tapping of keyboards. My desk was sparse. Just my computer, a notebook filled with ideas, and a coffee mug with a faded logo from a hackathon I'd won in college. I'd been working on something special for months. Late nights, weekends, even sketching ideas during my commute. A new framework that could revolutionize how our company's apps communicated with each other. Faster, more secure, with 40% less code. The kind of innovation that could save millions in development costs and give us a serious edge over competitors. Mark Daniels was my direct supervisor. Tall, always dressed in expensive button-downs, with his sleeves carefully rolled to show his fitness tracker. He had that specific kind of corporate confidence that comes from taking credit for other people's work. His laugh was always a little too loud, his handshakes a little too firm, his promises a little too grand. I wasn't naive. I knew how the game was played, which is why I'd been carefully documenting everything. Each development milestone was properly logged, committed, and timestamped. I'd even filed a preliminary patent application through the company's innovation portal, which created an official record in the system. The morning everything changed, Mark stopped by my cubicle. Usually, he barely acknowledged my existence, but today, he pulled up a chair and lowered his voice. "Hey, how's that framework coming along? The one you mentioned in the team meeting?" I felt a small flutter of pride. He'd never shown interest in my work before. "It's going well," I said, turning my monitor so he could see. "I've solved the latency issues we were having. Want to see the demo?" He leaned in, eyes scanning the code. "This is impressive. Really impressive." For the next hour, I walked him through everything. The architecture, the efficiency gains, the security protocols. He asked smart questions, took notes, nodded approvingly. For once, I felt seen, valued. "Listen," he said as he stood to leave, "don't share this with the team yet. I think this is executive level stuff. Let me talk to some people upstairs, see if we can fast track this." I nodded, flattered. "Sure thing. And send me the repository link. I want to review this in detail tonight." I should have seen the warning signs, the sudden interest, the request for exclusive access. But after years of being overlooked, the validation was intoxicating. Over the next few weeks, Mark became unusually friendly. Coffee invitations, lunch meetings where he'd probe for more details about implementation, always ending with the same refrain: "Keep this between us for now." Then came the first red flag. During a team meeting, I mentioned I was working on a new framework approach, and Mark immediately cut me off. "Actually, we're exploring several options right now," he said smoothly. "Nothing's been decided. Let's stick to the current sprint items." Later that day, he stopped by my desk. "Hey, about the meeting. We need to be strategic about how we present this. The executive team is already interested. The timing is everything." I nodded, but something felt off. The way he said "we" while clearly meaning "I." The second red flag came a week later. I noticed my access to certain development servers had been restricted. When I asked a T about it, they said the request had come from Mark's office. When confronted, he brushed it off as a security protocol update. "Don't worry about it," he said, not quite meeting my eyes. "I've got everything backed up." That night, I stayed late and checked the repository logs. Mark had cloned the entire project to a private repository under his name. He'd also downloaded all my documentation and design files. My coffee mug felt cold in my hands as I stared at the evidence. The betrayal was taking shape, but I still couldn't quite believe it. Not after 8 years at the company. Not after all the late nights and loyalty. I decided to protect myself. I made copies of everything. Every commit, every timestamp, every email discussion about the project. I verified my patent application was still in the system. Then I waited, watching. 3 days later, Mark sent an email to the executive team, CCing me almost as an afterthought. He was proposing a special presentation on a revolutionary new framework architecture he'd been developing. The presentation was scheduled for Thursday afternoon, with the entire board present, including the CEO. I replied with a simple question: will I be presenting the technical details of the framework? His response came an hour later: I'll handle the presentation. Your recent performance issues make me hesitant to put you in front of the executive team. Performance issues? This was the first I'd heard of any problems with my work. I checked my recent performance reviews, all positive. The next morning, Mark wasn't in the office. Instead, I received a calendar invitation for a meeting with HR at 2 p.m. My stomach dropped. I knew what was coming. The HR representative, a woman I'd never met before, had a folder with my name on it and a rehearsed expression of corporate sympathy. "I'm afraid we have to terminate your employment, effective immediately," she said, sliding a document across the table. "Your performance has been flagged as problematic for several quarters now." "By whom?" I asked, though I already knew the answer. "Your direct supervisor has documented multiple instances of missed deadlines and quality issues." I looked at the termination document. Mark had apparently been building a case against me for months. Fabricated issues, exaggerated mistakes, invented scenarios where I'd supposedly failed to deliver, all dated after I'd started work on the framework. "I'll need to collect your badge and escort you to clear out your desk," she continued. I nodded, strangely calm. "Of course." As I packed my things into a cardboard box, the notebook, a few personal items, my coffee mug, an email notification appeared on my phone. From Mark, sent to the entire development team. "As you may have heard, we've had to let one of our team members go today due to ongoing performance issues. On a more positive note, I'm excited to invite you all to attend Thursday's executive presentation, where I'll be unveiling a groundbreaking new framework I've developed that will change how we approach app development at TechSphere." And then, the twist of the knife, a separate email sent only to me. "I thought you might want to see the culmination of the project. Feel free to attend Thursday's presentation as my guest. Sometimes it helps to see how these things should be done properly. Consider it a learning opportunity for your next role, wherever that may be." He wanted me there. He wanted to see my face as he took credit for my work, as he built his career on my innovation. The HR woman was watching me expectantly, waiting for me to leave. "Just one moment," I said. Taking out my phone, I forwarded Mark's email to myself, then carefully placed my company laptop in the box. "I'm ready now." That night, I didn't panic. I didn't rage. Instead, I meticulously prepared. I printed out the Git commit history showing every change I'd made to the project over the past 6 months. I retrieved the patent application confirmation. I compiled emails where I'd discussed early concepts of the framework with team members, all predating any involvement from Mark. Most crucially, I had the server logs showing exactly when Mark had cloned my repository and the exact changes he'd made, primarily removing my name and adding his own. Thursday morning arrived. I dressed carefully in my best suit, not the one I wore to work, but the one I saved for interviews and special occasions. I arrived at the office building 30 minutes before the presentation was scheduled to begin. The receptionist recognized me. "Oh, I thought you'd left the company." "I'm here as Mark Daniels' guest for the executive presentation," I said, showing her the email invitation. She made a quick call, then handed me a visitor badge. "They're in the main conference room on at 20. They're just getting started." The elevator ride to the 20th floor felt surreal. I carried a slim portfolio containing all my evidence. My heart was pounding, but my hands were steady. I slipped into the back of the conference room just as Mark was being introduced by the CEO. Around the massive table sat the entire executive team, 12 people who controlled the direction of a company worth billions. Mark stood at the front, confident in an expensive new suit, remote clicker in hand. "Today, I'm excited to share something I've been working on for the past 6 months," he began, his voice resonating with practiced authority. "A framework that will revolutionize our entire development pipeline." He clicked to the first slide, my architecture diagram with his name in the footer. For the next 20 minutes, I watched as Mark presented my work as his own. Every concept, every innovation, every solution to problems I'd spent countless nights solving. He used my exact examples, sometimes even my exact words from documentation I'd written. The executives were clearly impressed, nodding, asking questions that Mark answered using knowledge he'd extracted from me during those friendly coffee meetings. The potential cost savings alone are estimated at $12 million annually, he said, showing my ROI calculations. And that's before we consider the competitive advantage. The CEO leaned forward. This is exceptional work, Mark. Exactly the kind of innovation we need. What's your timeline for full implementation? Mark smiled, triumphant. We could begin integration within the month. I've already built a working prototype that demonstrates all the core functionality. And the team you'll need? Asked the CTO. I've identified the key developers already, Mark replied. Unfortunately, I did have to let one team member go this week who wasn't performing to standards, but it won't impact our timeline. That was my cue. I stood up from my chair in the back of the room. Every head turned. Excuse me, I said, my voice steadier than I expected. I believe there's been a misunderstanding about the origin of this framework. Mark's face froze in a grimace that was trying desperately to be a smile. This is, the team member I mentioned. I'm not sure why he's here. The CEO looked between us, confused. What's going on, Mark? I approached the table, opening my portfolio. I'm the developer of this framework. Every line of code, every architectural decision, every innovation you just saw was my work, not Mark's. Mark's laugh was brittle. This is absurd and frankly unprofessional. Security can escort you out. I placed the first document on the table, the Git commit history showing 6 months of work, all under my user account, with detailed comments documenting the development process. These are the complete repository logs, I said calmly. You'll notice the first commit was on January 12th, and the last was on Tuesday, the day I was terminated. You'll also notice that Mark's only contribution came last week, when he cloned the repository and changed the author information. I placed the second document down. This is my patent application for the core technology, filed through our innovation portal 3 months ago. The CTO picked it up, frowning as she examined it. And this, I continued, placing a third document on the table, is the server log showing exactly when and how the repository was cloned to Mark's private account, followed by the removal of my name from all documentation. Mark's face had drained of color. This is a misrepresentation. He was part of a team I was leading, a small part. Is there anyone else on this supposed team who can corroborate that? I asked. Silence filled the room. The CEO's expression had hardened. Mark, is this true? Of course not, Mark said. But his voice had lost its confidence. He's just bitter about being let go. Check his performance reviews. The performance reviews that suddenly turned negative after 6 years of excellent evaluations. The ones dated after I began work on this framework. I placed those on the table too. Convenient timing. The CTO had been examining the Git logs carefully. She looked up at Mark. These timestamps and commit messages tell a pretty clear story, and they match the patent application exactly. Mark was beginning to sweat visibly. There's an explanation for all of this. I'm sure there is, said the CEO coldly, and I look forward to hearing it in my office, immediately. As Mark was escorted out, the CEO turned to me. I owe you an apology. Clearly, we have a serious issue here that needs to be addressed. I understand, I said. I just couldn't let my work be stolen. Would you be willing to stay and walk us through the framework properly? As its actual creator? I paused, considering. I'm afraid I no longer work here. I was terminated on Tuesday for performance issues. The room grew uncomfortably quiet. That can be rectified, the CEO said quickly. We can reinstate you immediately, with appropriate compensation for this misunderstanding. I looked around the room at the executives who had been so impressed with my work when they thought it came from Mark. I looked at my coffee mug, still sitting on the conference room table where Mark had placed it before beginning his presentation. He'd actually brought it as a prop to establish his ownership of the project, not realizing the irony. I appreciate the offer, I said, picking up my mug, but I've had some time to think about my future. I believe this framework has significant market potential beyond TechSphere. The CEO's expression shifted subtly. You signed an intellectual property agreement when you joined the company. The framework belongs to TechSphere. Actually, I said, I reviewed that agreement carefully. It covers work done using company resources during company time. I developed the core architecture and algorithms on my own time, using my personal equipment. I have the original commits to my private GitHub to prove it. The implementation specific to TechSphere systems came later, and yes, belongs to the company. But the core technology itself? That's mine. I hadn't planned to go this route when I walked into the room. But watching Mark present my life's best work as his own had crystallized something for me. I didn't want to go back to being invisible. The CTO and CEO exchanged glances. "What are you proposing?" the CTO asked carefully. "I'm establishing my own development firm to bring this framework to market," I said. TechSphere could become my first client, with a favorable licensing arrangement in recognition of our history. Or you can develop your own solution from scratch. Your choice. The next 2 hours involved lawyers, heated discussions, and eventually a preliminary agreement. TechSphere would get a perpetual license to use my framework at a significantly reduced rate. In exchange, I retained full ownership of the core technology and the right to market it to other companies, including competitors, after a 1-year exclusivity period. As for Mark, I heard later that he was terminated that same day. His 6-figure bonus evaporated. His reputation in the industry was damaged beyond repair when word got out about what he'd done. Last I heard, he'd left tech altogether and moved to another state. That was 3 years ago. Today, my company employs 37 people, including 5 former TechSphere developers who reached out after hearing what happened. Our framework is used by 14 major tech companies. Last month, we turned down an acquisition offer that valued the company at $140 million. I still have that coffee mug. It sits on my desk in my corner office with windows overlooking the city. Sometimes when I'm working late, I run my fingers over its chipped rim and remember that Tuesday when I got fired, and that Thursday when everything changed. The mug reminds me that good work speaks for itself eventually. That documentation matters. That preparation beats panic every time. And that sometimes getting fired is the best thing that can happen to you, if you're prepared to turn betrayal into opportunity. But mostly, it reminds me of Mark's face when I said those 3 little words that ended his career and launched mine: Git, commit, history.